Well, I can't thank you enough. It's a wonderful program. Can't recommend the program enough to anybody. If people are young hearing this, do it while you're young. And if you're older, get started. Anything's better than where you are now.
Hey, Chris, it's nice to see you this evening. How are you?
Hi, Martha. I'm doing very well. Thank you.
When we first met, the quality of your life was very different to how it is now, as far as I understand it.
So when I first came to the program and started to learn Buteyko, I was coming from having migraines, headaches on a regular basis. I had had them for over 20 years. And I just always knew that it was a sign something was wrong, but I didn't know what was wrong. And I kept searching. And I kept a little book, a little calendar, and I would write down H for headache and I tracked them because I tried all kinds of things to help them to get better. Diet, to try different diets, the elimination diet. Was it an allergy? I tried the blood type diet. And a lot of things I did try helped me in certain ways, but they didn't, help with these chronic conditions that I was so baffled by. Because at an early age, too, I had suffered some addictions. I got into a recovery program and I changed the way that I ate. I abstained from sugar, refined flour, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, mood and mind altering drugs. So I had a very cleaned out system and I tried to eat organic and I wasn't heavy into exercise, but I walked regularly and things like that. So I considered myself, or I thought I had a very healthy lifestyle. So, like I said, as I got older and these conditions came, they didn't make sense to me. I didn't buy the concept that it was just old age. I had a lot of these symptoms in my 30s, 40s, and then I came to Buteyko in my early 50s. I'm now in my mid 50s, but I didn't really think it was age. And even, as I got into my 40s and you start moving towards menopause, and some things can be talked about as symptoms of that. But again, it didn't totally explain it for me. I had a lot of other chronic conditions too. It's funny because some you just accept as this is part of life. There were things that went away using the Buteyko method that I didn't even really think could be connected to my breathing or carbon dioxide deficiency. You just kind of accept these things like sensitivity in my teeth or things that you're told are part of perimenopausal, like hot flashes. Once I started doing Buteyko, I had no more hot flashes. I also had rosacea, which is a condition of the face where it turns red, it flushes, certain trigger factors. I have no more rosacea. I used to get very, very tender sore breasts monthly. And again, I thought that was normal as a female condition. And I had a cleansing in Buteyko. I don't know exactly when, maybe after a year, but I had a cleansing where they were really, really sore for about a week. And then I haven't had sore breasts since. Like, again, it's something I would not even connect. The other thing is emotionally, in the last probably 5 years before Bottega, I really was having a very difficult time emotionally. I had years, literally years, where I was crying almost on a daily basis. I had crying spells. I didn't let them rule my life. I was aware that they were a symptom, so I didn't like say, oh, I'm, clinically depressed and I have to take antidepressants or anything like that. But again, it was like, what is wrong? What is wrong? And yes, there was childhood issues I had to look into and trauma and different things. And I did do some healing work around those issues, but it still didn't feel normal that I would have crying spells every day. And I no longer have crying spells. I no longer feel depressed or anxious. I also was starting to get very anxious. And again, these were things that, like in my recovery program. So, just to talk a little bit about that, I was pretty self destructive as a teenager, but I got into a recovery program very early. I had been bulimic for a couple of years in my teens, binging and purging daily. In fact, right now I'm going through some digestive issues and I'm thinking, I had to have done damage to my digestive tract with that kind of behavior for 2 years, almost every day.
Mm.
And so I could be going through cleansing, of healing my digestive tract, my intestines. There could be a lot that's still going on. But anyway, I got into a program of recovery and I learned a whole new way of life. I felt like sanity was restored to my life. I had a healthier self image. I learned self worth. I learned how to take care of myself. I learned a spiritual way of life. So things got really better in my life. My 20s were great
Mhm.
and I was doing really well. I did have a major car accident, near fatal car accident, which we can talk about more later, when I was 25. And, but basically, I was a calm person, a sane person. I was able to function, take care of myself. As I got older, these things that kind of came into my life didn't make sense to me. The physical symptoms, the emotional symptoms, but I also started to get very anxious. I started to get very tense. I would even shake sometimes. I started to get heart palpitations. It just didn't make sense to me, because,
There has to be a cause, doesn't there?
and I didn't know what that was.
Mm.
And I learned about Buteyko method, or the more general Buteyko, Professor Buteyko, from my natural vision improvement teacher.
Mhm.
About 5 years ago, I started doing the Bates method to help my eyes, my vision,
Mhm.
because it was getting worse and worse, losing my close-up vision. And so anyway, I took this training, and I haven't worn glasses for 5 years. And my teacher, Nathan Oxenfeld, he told me about the Buteyko method. He sent me some videos. They weren't your videos, but it's how I learned about it. And there were some books and a do-it-yourself program. And I know today that Professor Buteyko doesn't advocate that, teaching out of books. But I did learn, some basics. I learned about shallow breathing. I learned about carbon dioxide deficiency. I learned that I had an over-breathing problem. I learned how to take my control pause, the best of my ability at that time.
What was it?
My control pause was around 15,
Mm.
17 maybe.
Okay.
Uh, but noticed right away that when I would hold my breath, even for 10 seconds, because the particular method I was doing at that time wasn't doing the maximum pauses the way that we teach here,
Mm.
but just doing small breath holds, I found made me feel calmer.
Mhm.
Just doing a small breath hold made me feel calmer. Doing the shallow breathing made me feel calmer. I was really motivated to do the program. I really wanted to get my control pause up because when I had done research, I would see these little charts and they would talk about the optimal breathing, the optimal control pause, and the different degrees. And I knew I was in the unhealthy range, closer to the dangerous than the optimal.
Yeah.
I wanted to get it up. So I practiced on my own and it did make me feel better, but I couldn't get my control pause to increase. I remember one time when I was doing some research, I came across one of Christopher Drake's webinars. Remember the Russian music. I remember the list of the chronic diseases.
His three-part documentary that he did.
Yes, and I think I saw that and it made a big impression on me, but I didn't bookmark it. And I remember in the literature that I was reading, I remember thinking, well, where is it talking about these other chronic conditions? And also, I think I started having cleansing, but I had nobody to talk to about it. I had nobody to ask questions. I would look on the internet. What I was reading made it sound like cleansing reaction might just last for a few hours or a day, or it didn't seem to be my experience. And I kept searching, and finally I came across the Learn Buteyko online program. And at that point, I really felt like I need some help here. I saw the workshops and I was like, yeah, I want to take one of these because I want to be taught how to do this. I want to be able to have somebody that I can ask questions about. I want to get my control pause up because ultimately I want to turn my health around. I'm naturally attracted to things that are scientific. It made perfect sense to me when I read about Professor Buteyko's discovery
Mm.
and listening to people share their experience and then having my own experience. I never had any doubt in this method. I took the workshop, it's almost 4 years, December of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't easy, and I guess it isn't if you have a control pause under 20, but it was so worth it. It just changed my life. That was the beginning of starting to get my life back, my health back.
You were able to discharge your migraine headaches. Tell me something about the way that went.
I'd lose hours just having to be lying down, shades pulled, not being able to do much. Most of the time I could function at work, but as time went on, I started needing to take days off of work. A lot of times it would be on the weekend, so I'd lose, most of my weekend. I would have headaches, definitely weekly, oftentimes 12, 13 days a month. I'd have a headache, not always a severe migraine, but that was like 20 plus years. And I also found that as I got older, I just seemed to have a harder time getting out of bed in the morning. And it always baffled me why I woke up with headaches, why they would often start very early in the morning, because I thought that that's when you're relaxed. Why would you wake up with headaches? And mentally, too, there was the mental component that I would wake up and if I had a migraine, I would start trying to, like, what did you do last night? Did you sit the wrong way? Did you read the wrong way? Was your neck in the wrong way? A lot of times I'd be blaming myself for the headaches. I'll never forget the first time after starting working with your team that I had a migraine headache. I remember getting in touch with you. I was in bed. I hadn't eaten anything. I was in a lot of pain. I remember you contacted me. I think you called me and you walked me through what to do, how to treat the migraine. And I had never had anybody do that before. You told me how to do my pauses, that I needed to do them very gently and might need to do more of them until, the headache would come off. And uh, so I did that. It wasn't easy. When your head hurts and you can't lift it off the pillow hardly, the last thing you want to do are
Breath
ma-
holding.
maximum pauses that we're taught. But I did it because I wanted relief. And amazingly, it worked.
Mm.
I did have to do a lot of them, but or more than usual, probably double the amount that I would normally do. And the headache came off. I was just amazed. It didn't always last. I would have to sometimes do it again and maybe even again. But I would normally have these headaches for about 48 hours.
Mm.
And most of that time would be spent lying down in the dark, or I would take a pain reliever to take the edge off. But once I learned how to use the practice to help the migraine, it really made a huge difference. I never really had to be on the couch again. As time went on, I didn't have to take pain relievers. It was a process. I would say probably 2 to 3 years for them to really almost like be gone totally.
Mm.
They would decrease in either frequency or intensity. I would be able to also like use it as a prevention. Like if I started to feel a headache coming on, I would use the method and it wouldn't turn into a migraine. So I could oftentimes, head
Stop
it off.
stop it from
And
developing. Yeah. If you can catch it soon enough.
exactly, I would try to catch it soon enough. And it was just wonderful to just not have them to that degree. They were never as painful. After learning the method, I, I, I could function. I could function much better. And I remember you saying that they may not go away completely, but you can function better. And that was true. I don't know now when the last time I had a migraine was. Sometimes I can wake up a little headachy, but again, I do my pauses first thing in the morning, generally takes it right off. I still believe it's a symptom of deep breathing, so maybe I overslept, but it's just so much better. Plus my control pause in general is so much higher. Everything is better.
The
Higher
body
control
doesn't
pause.
produce that symptom once your control pauses over 30.
Right,
So you're out of
right.
that territory.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, if we've been hyperventilating in the night and you've got a bit of a drop, then the headache might start up. But then all you have to do
Mhm.
is boost your practice as soon as you wake up, and whoop, your control pause goes up and symptoms gone.
Yep, exactly. You asked me a little while ago about sleep. I never really had a problem too much sleeping, except that I woke up with migraines. But there were times that I would sleep on my back, and I know today that that's one of the worst positions for my breathing, and the mouth would fall open, so I would be breathing, through my mouth. And so I changed the way that I slept, and I no longer slept on my back. And also, I started mouth taping. That was something I started even before this group, and that helped. That definitely helped. Just to stop that deep breathing at night.
So the next major thing you had to deal with was reversal of injury in your legs from the car accident.
Yes, I had several operations on my legs as a result of that car accident. The first operation was because I was bleeding internally, nearly died from that. I had to have my left leg cut open from close to my knee to all the way up to my hip to relieve the pressure, or I would have lost the leg. I had a huge hematoma on that leg that took a long time for the blood to be reabsorbed into the leg. After that surgery, I had a surgery on my right leg, which was a skin graft to close up the scar on the left leg. I was left with a very hideous scar that was about this thick, was a kind of a ravine. Plus, I was left with kind of a sack, almost like an empty sack on the back of my left thigh. I lived with that for about 12 years. And then a friend gave me the money to have plastic surgery to remove the scar and to fix the sack in the back because part of it was like we didn't even know what was in there uh, in that. So a big chunk of my flesh on the left leg was taken out. So my left leg had three surgeries, and my right leg had one surgery. I always had some residual pain in those legs. So part of the cleansing that I went through with the Buteyko method, I could feel stuff happening in mostly the left leg. I'd feel like little twinges, little nerve impulses and pin pricks, and I would know that there was cleansing going on in that leg. What was really interesting to me is when I really started doing some major cleansing, I would really get swollen legs uh, from my ankles all the way almost to my knee sometimes, and you could almost see it like a shelf. It would, I could feel it, this thickness in my calf. In fact, at one point, I couldn't even wear my regular shoes. The swelling was so much. But what always impressed me was that the swelling was almost twice as much in my left leg as in my right leg. And that was for a long time. And they would be swollen sometimes for months. It was always more in the left leg. And like I said, that was significant to me because there was probably a lot of toxins built up around the scar areas. I don't even know all the reasons, but I don't have as much swelling anymore. I'll still go through bouts when I may have some swelling, but not, I think, the bulk of it. Hopefully, the toxicity has been released. I was cut down the front, my abdomen. I believe that was when they were looking to find where the bleeding was. And I forget what they're called, but I had these little bumps all along the
The scar.
incisions.
Mm.
Yeah, scar, almost like a bead of pearls. They're still there, but they're smaller. So I think my body is slowly dissolving them. And so that's cleansing, more toxicity that's coming out. But now I really have very little pain in my legs. Occasionally I'll feel something, but I definitely know that there's been healing in those legs. I didn't think again that I was that toxic, but the swelling, I was told that when the body's detoxing, it tries to dilute the toxins and then it sends them as far away from the internal organs as possible. And that made sense to me. So when I see the swelling, I know, okay, I'm cleansing. And then it comes with other symptoms that are cyclical in nature. For me, they just, I don't know the exact cycle, but it's very familiar to me now when I'm going through cleansing. I might have a day where I have a little diarrhea, nothing major, but bloating, lack of appetite. I don't really want to eat. Sometimes I just don't feel well, or fatigue. I can have some fatigue. So I'll have a few days where I'll have swelling and I'll be accompanied by these other symptoms. And I just know I'm going through a cleansing bout. My pauses will drop. It'll be harder to do my maximum pauses. So I've just come to just know this pattern, and it just repeats and it repeats and it repeats.
Find the time between the last repeat and the next one gets longer and
Mhm.
longer as time goes on.
Yes, at this point, yes, the major cleanses, I don't have them quite as close to each other. And I can tell the swelling is not as much. Occasionally, I might go through more of a period, but hopefully, we're getting towards the end of some of this toxicity.
Sure. Well, it takes what it takes.
It does. And I have to just know that it took a lot of years to get to where I got. I didn't get sick overnight. I'm not going to get better overnight, but I feel so much better that I think my worst day today doesn't compare to my best day before.
Hmm.
No matter what I'm going through, whether I'm cleansing or not feeling that well, it's still better than before.
I seem to remember you saying that you were unaware that you had chronic fatigue, and it wasn't until you started the method that you realized how fatigued you were.
Exactly. Exactly. It was another one of those things that I thought was normal. I didn't think it was necessarily normal for everybody, but I grew up with people saying, Chris, you have a very delicate nervous system, because I had quite a childhood, a lot of instability, a lot of moving around, a lot of trauma. I thought some of it was that. And then because of my recovery, then it's maybe normal that I, just am kind of slower and can't do a lot. But when I look back now, I realize that, yeah, like I'd go to a family event and spend a couple hours or something. And that was about all I could do, Uh, I didn't travel. I had a lot of fears related to the chronic fatigue that I wasn't really aware of. I was afraid of working overtime. I couldn't stay up really late. I had to go to bed pretty early. If I didn't get a certain amount of sleep, 7 or 8 hours, and I didn't function that well. I didn't do a lot of extracurricular activities. I mean, going to work, coming home, eating supper, doing dishes, maybe having an hour, and then pretty much getting ready for bed. That was kind of my life. I managed it through my lifestyle. So my lifestyle was very limited because I knew it was painful to extend beyond that. So again, I sort of accepted it as my normal. But when I learned about how the method helped with chronic fatigue, and you talked about having chronic fatigue, and when I started to get more energy and I started not to need as much sleep and I started to feel better, I wasn't so emotional. I didn't have as much brain fog either. That was another symptom. I started to realize, oh wow, I had chronic fatigue. And towards the end, I would actually start to fall asleep during the day. I actually started to feel the fatigue more. So I'd actually feel like, oh my gosh, I have to lie down, or I'd fall asleep in a chair. And now, because I don't sleep as much, because I have more energy, I'm really able to do things that I couldn't do before. Like, I'm not afraid to travel. I'm not afraid to work longer days at work. I'm not afraid to get up really early or stay up late. And I do, I mean, staying up till 10, 11, 12, even 1 sometimes is not a problem. If I'm not tired, I just, you know, don't go to sleep. I can wake up in the middle of the night if I need to, or, I did need to break my sleep. I don't break my sleep as much now. Probably should once in a while, but I can do it with the program and I can do it with the pauses. I'm also just doing more in my life. Like I've been able to do more with my artwork. Like I'm taking a course of study right now, which is involving hours of training that I discipline myself to do at certain times. I wouldn't have been able to do that before.
Mm.
The job I do now, an IS manager, which is part of IT. I'm a busy manager. I'm a project manager, and I would have never been able to do that. I would have had too much fear that I was going to be called upon to do, and that I wasn't going to be able to do it. And I know today I can do it. And even things like I have the kind of job that I could get a call in the middle of the night. If they have a system problem, it's a 24-hour business, 7 days a week.
Mm. What's your control pause now?
It's hard to know because it kind of still goes up and down with cleansing, but I would say it's at least in the mid 40s.
Mm.
It might be higher because I still go through a lot of cleansing, but it doesn't really drop. It's usually at least 35, even when I'm, cleansing. Um, it. I'd say it goes between 35 and 50. What a difference when I got over. Well, huge difference when I got over 20. It took about probably 3 months to get it into the 20s. Probably took a little longer for it to stabilize,
I mean, that
but it,
that quality of life below 20, there's nothing like it, is there? You'll never go
it
back there, will you?
no, never want to go back to that.
Mm.
No, exactly. And it was so much harder. Everything was harder just doing the practice.
Yeah.
But I knew it was helping me and I was just highly motivated. I mean, people think of me, I think, as a very disciplined person. And in general, I am, although I know where my shortcomings are. But to me, there's two other D words that are very important: desire and desperation. And that's, I think, what I have more than discipline and dedication. I've wanted for years to get better.
Mm.
If you have that desire to get better, I mean, the second thing is the gift of desperation. So many people that I know that are worse than me. Like I have a friend who was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, but for some reason, this this method has it even just hearing about it is not enough to even motivate her to look into it.
Yeah. There's lots of people.
And her quality of life is so much worse than mine was. But for some reason, I've been given the gift of the willingness to do this. And then there's some people who express an interest. They think it's really interesting. They seem to want, learn about it. I send them the links, but they don't. And then there's other people who see it working for me, but they don't want to do what I do. For some reason, I'm desperate enough. Yeah, I do. I feel very blessed, and I wish more people would be willing to do it and see how wonderful it is.
And one of the
But
greatest things I found, because I don't have discipline, with this
mm,
method, I felt better afterwards. And that was what motivated me, because I felt better. I felt more comfortable in my body
mhm,
every time.
exactly, exactly, and that's the thing, and you only know that if you do it.
Yeah.
You have to experience it, and yeah, that's true. That's a big thing that motivates me too. I feel better. I look forward to my pauses now. I mean, I didn't in the beginning. In the beginning, they were very hard, and it was just like, you just have to do this. The other thing too about the desperation too is the sense of this is life and death. And I felt that with my addictions. I felt like if I didn't address them, they were going to kill me. And that's how I feel about this. It made sense to me that by over breathing, my body wasn't getting enough oxygen with the CO2 deficiency, which meant my body was starving of
Yeah.
which meant my body was dying. So to me, it's like, oh, if you came across a baby that was starving and dying, wouldn't you help that baby? Well, I'm that baby,
Yeah.
you know? And I also was raised on cliches like, if you don't do what's good for you, you're not going to be good for anybody else. I need to save my own life first, and then maybe I can help other people. It can be more important than saving your own life.
Mm.
So I think those attitudes really served me well to help me just to keep going. Plus, like what you're saying, is I just feel better
Mm.
when I do it. You know, if I'm out and about and it's like I want to come home and do my pauses, you know. Although I've learned ways to integrate them, you know,
Yeah.
I can
Sure.
do different ways.
One of the interesting things that occurs with this approach is our behavior changes.
Mhm.
Give some sense of the contrast of before and after your mental health.
I was very aware at an early age because of my recovery of some of my mental habits uh, and different ways of thinking, and I learned different ways to address things like fear and anger and resentment and self-centeredness and a lot of things like that. And I would address it spiritually as well. And so there was improvement in my mental, and like I said in the beginning, when I was young. But I could see, again, deterioration happening as I got older. I saw my thinking become more obsessive. I was getting more crazy or insane thoughts, very self-conscious, self-centered type of thinking, being preoccupied with what I thought people thought of me, being on other people's heads, seeking approval, not feeling complete within myself. And I didn't like it. Like I was very aware of it. Like I was very aware of my mental thought patterns. And I knew which ones were healthy and which ones were not healthy. And I wanted more than anything to feel whole, to feel complete, not feel like I needed a person to approve of me or to need a relationship or anything like that. So intellectually, I knew what I wanted, but emotionally and mentally, I was bombarded a lot of times with unwanted thoughts, unwanted feelings, and it was getting worse as I got older. It was something that I thought should be getting better, not not getting worse. And I worked very hard at different healing modalities and journaling and praying and meditating and different things. And it didn't make sense again that it was getting worse. I felt this dissatisfaction. What's really amazing is just after doing the method several months, now it's been years, I've just seen that so many of those issues that I had are just like gone. I mean, they're just like it's not an issue anymore. I'm just not thinking that way. I'm not feeling that way. My mind is not as obsessive, not as crazy thinking. I feel whole. I feel complete. I feel content with my life, even where I live. And it's okay, I think, to have things that you want logically. Like someday I would like to move. I live in the city. I'd like to get out of the city, things like that. But I also, at the same time, now feel much more content where I am. Like it's not time to move yet. When it's time, it will happen. I'm just much more content. And I'm learning just be content where I am for today. But I can say that with a lot of things that it's a relief from the mind. I don't feel as tortured. Uh, I don't
Yeah.
feel as tortured by my mind. I'm not as anxious. I don't feel down. I'm not crying. Some things are normal and natural. I lost a dear, dear friend, my mentor, who was like a second mother to me. And I went through grief, and I still may have moments of grief that I feel is natural and normal, but it's not like what I went through before when I didn't have a reason to have grief was worse than a normal grief experience.
Mm.
Um, I think you told me it would discharge. It would come up, but then it would discharge maybe in 6 weeks or whatever. And I feel like that, like it came and it went. Whereas before things would come and it's like they never went.
Never went. No,
They
they get stuck.
exactly, they would get stuck. Childhood stuff just got stuck and
I had a lot of pain across here and tightness in
mhm,
the shoulders. It was like it was heavy. Everything was heavy I was carrying.
mhm, exactly.
The world's worries on my
Mhm,
shoulders.
mhm. It's hard to put into words. It's really, and yet this is a testimony, but it's really hard to put into words. It's a real transformation. You've used that word. And I went through that as a young adult. There was a transformation in my life. I honestly never thought that there'd be another program that would have that kind of effect on my life, like a revolutionary change, like a
Mm.
360-degree change, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, just like that. And all because I'm holding my breath. I mean,
The way
I
I
don't want to
understand
tell you how many times I've held my breath to get this, but it's been worth it. One of the things we didn't talk about as part of the detox process, I lost a lot of weight. I wasn't heavy really to begin with. I had a lot more fat on my body than I thought I did. If you had told me I had 35 pounds of fat on my body when I didn't even weigh 120 when I came in.
it.
If you told me I had that much fat to lose, I wouldn't have believed you. But I have lost that fat and it's not the weight I want to stay at. I believe that, I've been told and I believe that the body has to break down. You told me in the early on, you have to lose the toxins, and the toxins are stored in the fat. So if you don't lose the fat, you don't lose the toxins. So we've been losing the toxins, so we've been losing the fat. And I do believe it will come on. It's taking its good old time. And I've had to be patient. That's been an area that's been a little difficult for me because it dramatically affected the way that I look, the clothes I wear, everything like that. But I did look at some pictures. Even though I'm still very thin and the weight hasn't really come back on, I don't look as gaunt.
Softer in the face now.
Exactly. And I know that the weight will come on in time. And now I'm starting to build up muscle.
Mm.
Now I'm addressing a new health issue. We talked about the chronic issues that I was aware of, but there were chronic issues going on that I wasn't aware of that I do believe are a result, again, of CO2 deficiency. And that for me, osteoporosis is something that I've become aware of
Mm.
in the last year or so. I had a spinal fracture last year, and I've had spinal fractures this year, and they have not been fun to recover from. Thank God I've still been able to work, but I just had some CAT scans done, and apparently this has been happening for a while. My bone density is very low to the point where I'm fracturing easy.
Mm.
And both of the times that I was aware of were with strain, like from a lifting,
Mm.
but not enough so that a normal person with normal bone density would break a bone. And Christopher talks about how, when we're deficient in CO2, the body has to compensate. All these conditions are because the body's trying to keep us alive, trying to keep the pH in check, and it's doing things to do that. So one of the things it does is strip the calcium off the bones. So I know the best thing that I'm doing is to keep doing this method. So I'm treating the root cause of the illness and I'm giving my body what it needs. I'm determined to reverse the osteoporosis naturally. So hopefully in our next interview, I will tell you how my bone density has improved.
Mm.
I took a test, so I know what it is. I plan to take another test in a year.
Mm.
So I'm doing my Buteyko practice and doing the right types of exercises. Now I'm doing the sauna as you recommended. I haven't had the opportunity before, but now I have the opportunity to do sauna. So really doing all these things to try to help my body, desperation. It's like I don't want to break another bone.
No.
I don't want to be disabled. There's been some repercussions from the last fractures. My back is quite kyphotic now. I've lost height. That's affected my appearance, my self-image. But mentally, you talk about the program and how it helps us mentally. I know that going through something like this, I'm going through it in a much different way than I would if I didn't have the Buteyko practice. I would have a lot more fear. We haven't talked a lot about fear, but I don't have the fear that I had before. I have practical fear in the sense, like, I know I need to be careful. I don't want to fall.
Hmm.
So I make decisions based on that.
Don't want to twist an ankle or something like that.
Exactly. So I try to make intelligent decisions,
Hmm.
but I'm not living in fear. I'm over 50, but I like to think of myself as still fairly young. And one of my orthopedic doctors said to me, you know, you're young enough to reverse this. And that was good to hear
Hmm.
because a lot of elderly people have spinal compression fractures. And when they start falling and they have that, they start being very afraid and they start using the walker and they start hunching over and it exacerbates the problem. I try to walk in confidence. I try to stand up straight and just do what I can do and live my life. I'm just like, okay, I pray not to fracture again, but if I do, I do. But I just, I do the method, I do the pauses. I know the more I can get CO2 into my body, into my spine, the better off I will be. I have the energy to do the exercises that I need to. So I keep going at the same time, not pushing too much. So there's this balance, but I feel so much more mentally able to deal with this reality in my life right now.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a big challenge.
It
Mm.
is. And I hope to be an example. I hope to be an example to other students learning Buteyko that, especially when you start the method older, we've accumulated more baggage, we have more toxins, we have more chronic conditions. Some we know about, some we don't. I also learned I had gallstones and some liver issues, but I believe those can get better too with the method. Not overnight, but it can get better with, what is it Christopher says? Steady, steady, persistent, persistence, steady, 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 steady. So that's what I try to do. Just keep on going.
Maintaining a high control pause is important because that's what's going to make the difference.
Yes, it is. It is. And I can talk a little bit too about the pauses. It was challenging to do the pauses after I had fractured. But what was great to learn, and this might be something I can share with somebody who might go through something similar, is I found that there are different ways to do the pauses. And I would just do it whatever way I could do it. Like I love doing steps where you walk and you do the practice, and I couldn't do steps, and I couldn't, like, for example, even a sitting pause at the end, you get up and you walk. It's like I couldn't get up unless I got up really slowly with two hands. So there was no way I was going to hold my nose and just bounce up and start walking. I couldn't do that. But I would just sit in the chair and I would just like wiggle my legs, like move my legs up in the air. And I also couldn't sit a lot. So I would do pauses lying down. And last year I would do them on my back. This year I couldn't lie on my back. So I would do them on my side. I would just do the pauses however I could do them. And if I couldn't do them, if I couldn't get the numbers up, I just would do what I could.
Mm.
And then as I got better, I would get the numbers up, and now I'm back to doing what I was doing before, and I'm even trying to push it to do a little bit more, just to keep, infusing myself with the medicine, because that's what I think of it. Every time I do a maximum pause, I do the practice, I'm giving myself medicine, I'm giving myself treatment.
You said that you had a lot of viral symptoms.
Yes, I used to get these terrible head colds, and I'd probably get at least 2 a year, and they would last, they would hang on, and I always had the sense that the virus is still in my body, and, it was. And when I started doing the method, I didn't get sick for quite a while, and then I had 2 cleansings, I believe 2, maybe 3, but interestingly, one of them was after I was actually kind of pushing my pauses. We usually go up to a certain point, but I was actually going beyond that and doing it a little bit too fast and kind of pushing them, and so really got kind of sick. But the thing about that, when I got sick, which was the cleansing, and I think you helped me identify uh, how it was cleansing. I think because my pauses were still high or something like that, but they were very classic symptoms. It was like it was like the classic. I think I had a head cold virus, and I used to have a chest cold, and I had a cleansing for each one where I went through the exact same symptoms, uh, but there were signs, like I said, that it was more of a cleansing reaction. And then I haven't been sick since. I also did at one point get the COVID. What was the name for it? It was the one that wasn't that.
Omicron?
Yes, yes, I had that.
Mm.
My roommate had it, and I think I just felt ill for like a day and a half. Yeah, I just felt like my immune system was so much stronger. And I don't even think I lost a day of work. I mean, I've worked remotely, obviously, didn't go into the office, but I still worked. I didn't feel that bad. I waited like the 5 days or whatever they say, and then I tested and I was negative. So my immune system definitely is just better. I don't have seasonal allergies anymore. That was another thing. I didn't have seasonal allergies as a child or a young adult. And as I got older, I wouldn't want to go for a walk on an April spring day because I'd feel terrible. I'd want to keep the windows closed. I'd be sneezing, my eyes would be irritated. I'd be stuffed up, have cold symptoms. Once I was able to get my pauses to, I think it was like 80 steps, uh, I was just not affected by seasons anymore. I'm just not, it's been 2 or 3 years that I haven't. It's great. I love it. Food allergies, just not so sensitive to foods. I can tolerate foods, dairy or grains much better than I could before. And I never knew that food allergies were related to the immune system.
Yeah, well, the immunity is dependent on the bonding between antibodies and antigens.
Mhm,
And that
mhm,
becomes more orderly as the level of CO2 goes up. So if you have sort of chaotic immune responses, that
mhm,
goes with low control pause. As the control pause goes up past a certain boundary, that's usually around 30-35 seconds, then
mhm,
you'll reverse it. Manage it with the big pauses. First of all, we manage it, and so you're out of trouble because every time
mhm,
you do pauses, your body feels a bit healthier.
mhm.
And eventually, once a control pause goes up high enough, the body doesn't produce that symptom at all.
Right. So now I just feel like I have a healthy immune system and I'm not getting sick, and so I'm very grateful for that.
But more
The other thing
comfortable in all sorts of ways. It's quite extraordinary, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It is. I had a fungus in my toenails in one of my feet. All 5 toes were infected. And I had had this for years, at least 20 to 30 years. Christopher said to me that I needed to take care of it with a medication because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to get my control pause up past a certain point. I had known that medications were out there, but I didn't want to take a medication, toxic oral medication. But if it was going to affect my control pause and it was going to affect my Buteyko recovery, I was willing to do it. And he told me if your control pause is at a certain point, you'll be able to detox the toxins from the medication.
Yeah.
So this particular medication, I think I had to take it for 3 months and then it would last in your body for a year. And it was brutal, but I just tolerated it for 3 months. And I did go through a lot of swelling that during that period. So I think my body was trying to get rid of it as I was going through it. But it did clear up the infection. And I did eventually come off the medication. And my control pause did go up when I, was able to stop taking the medication. And my toes are healthy. So that was just part of the journey,
Yeah.
going through that.
Yeah. Fungal toenails are a real problem.
Mm,
Can't get your control pause up above 30. You get stuck
mm,
in the early 20s. That it keeps
mhm.
dropping back.
Yeah, and I didn't want to work that hard to not be able to get it.
No. No, I think
Mm,
once you get your control pause up into the late 20s and around 30, then your body can tolerate medication because it's got to go through the liver. It's very taxing on the liver.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because that's one of the things that showed up on my CAT scan was liver issue and like heterogeneous liver. Sometimes it's called non-alcoholic fatty liver or non-alcoholic liver disease or something like that because I don't drink alcohol at all. And typically you see that with, somebody who drinks a lot of alcohol. But I also used to take a lot of medication for the migraines. I mean, I didn't take a excessive amount, but even taking small amounts regularly over a long period of time adds up to a lot. I didn't take anything stronger than ibuprofen, but those medications are toxic to the liver. But like I said, but yeah, I took that toenail medication, so that could have caused some issues. But I
Mm.
think that the body has what it needs to heal, and just got to give it time.
Yeah.
That four-letter word.
Yeah. Keeping on.
Yeah,
But it's
keep
only
on.
4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So another few months, maybe another year.
Yeah, I think we're getting close.
Because the control pause at the level you're at now is very, very potent.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of repair going on.
Yeah. And there's a lot to repair, more than I thought.
Well, thank you, Chris. That was
Thank you, Martha.
very informative. Um, it gives people some idea of the kinds of long-term changes that occur.
Yeah, I was just watching a video with the art training program that I'm doing. The teacher was talking about mastery, but he was talking about the plateau and that the trajectory is you go up and then you plateau or you go down a little bit, but then you go up and then you might plateau and then you go up. And overall, you're going up.
Yeah.
And that's what this is like a lot. The control pause might go up and then you plateau. You might even dip a little from cleansing, but then it'll go up and it takes a while, but overall you're going up.
Sure.
And so is your health, you know. And it doesn't matter to me whether, I mean, yeah, I wish things would be maybe a little faster, but as long as I'm getting better, it doesn't matter to me whether it takes 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. It's going to take as long as it takes because the alternative is this.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I was on before. It wasn't this, it was this. I was going down, down, down. So now at least I'm going up, up, up. And thank you, Martha. You're my inspiration.
Students are all the ones that do the work. They're all inspiring. Well, the whole
Yeah,
process is fascinating, isn't it?
it is fascinating.
That plateau and the feeling like you're going down, and you do go down, you do plateau and go down and then up.
Hmm.
Christopher calls that phase transition. It's a similar process that you keep filling up
Makes sense.
CO2, keep supplying it, supplying it, supplying it. It seems like nothing's happening. You keep supplying it, and then you get up a head of steam, and something
Some,
kicks.
something happens. Hmm.
Yeah, and then the key is to once that kicks off, that you keep delivering, especially if it's a cleansing reaction, and you don't
Hmm.
feel like practicing. It's important to keep delivering the
Keep
CO2,
delivering.
yeah, to support the process.
Well, I can't thank you enough. It's a wonderful program. Can't recommend the program enough to anybody. If people are young hearing this, do it while you're young. And if you're older,
Just get started.
get started, Anything's better than where you are now.
The reason why I do this is because I went through the same transformation that you're going through.
Hmm.
I was a wreck. No, I'm not. I'm not perfect, but I'm not a wreck. It's a huge difference.
I wish more people would be willing to do it and see how wonderful it is.